Hey guys, if you're sitting there with headphones on, lights off, looking for something that'll send a chill down your spine before bed, maybe you should pause this right now. Turn on a brighter lamp or save it for daylight. I'm serious, because the story I'm about to tell isn't one of those you forget by morning. It's about a place I've known since I was a kid, our lake. How it takes people quietly, without any noise, without screams. And why I now can't get close to any body of water without feeling that knot tighten in my gut. If you're new to the channel or just clicked by accident, hit that like button if you love real-life stories like this, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you've got a lake, pond, or even a deep quarry anywhere near you, after this video, you might look at it a little differently, especially at night, when the water turns black and still like a mirror that only reflects the sky and something else. My name is Ryan, and I grew up in a small town in the Northwoods of northern Michigan. We won't name the town. Those who are from around there will know exactly which one I mean. The town sits on the hills, and down in the lowlands between the old thick forest and the abandoned fields lies our lake. We always just called it our lake. Quiet, perfectly round, like a bowl, with shores thick with cattails and willows. The water stays clear even in the summer heat. You can see the bottom for a long way out, and the deepest part in the center is maybe 30 feet. In summer, we swam there, fished, and in winter, we skated on it. Just a normal place. At least, that's what it seemed like. But in the last 40 years, 32 people have died in that lake, or right beside it. I counted 32, and not a single death was what you'd call ordinary. Not one of them has ever been fully explained. I grew up surrounded by these stories. They were part of the local lore, like ghost tales or stories about an old witch in the woods. Except these stories were real. They had names, dates, and graves right there in our cemetery. The first one I really understood happened when I was 10. Summer of 2008. Uncle Mike, a local fisherman who knew the lake like the back of his hand. He'd head out in his boat every morning, set his nets, and come back by lunch with a full catch. That day, they found him on the shallows, just 10 feet from shore. His boat was tied up nearby, nets empty. He was lying face down, arms spread out like he was trying to hug the bottom. The doctor said he drowned, but there was almost no water in his lungs. And his face, eyes wide open, mouth twisted, like he'd seen something that made his heart just stop from pure terror. No signs of a struggle, no wounds. Just a man who'd spent his whole life on the water, suddenly lying down in the shallows 3 steps from dry land. After that, the adults got stricter. Don't go alone. Don't swim past the buoys. Don't sit by the water after dark. I figured it was just overprotectiveness. But then there were more cases. In 2012, a guy from the next town over, a star athlete, swimming champion for the youth league, came for the weekend and decided to take a dip by himself. The water was warm, calm, no ripple. They found him 2 days later, same shallows, same position, same face. The report said accidental drowning, but everyone knew. He could swim across the lake and back 5 times without breaking a sweat. Why would he drown in still water where a child could stand waist deep? Then there was the woman with the baby, 2015. She used to walk the trail along the shore pushing the stroller. One evening, they found her in the cattails. The stroller was still on the path, baby sleeping inside. She was lying in the water up to her ankles. No scream, no struggle, nothing. I could keep listing them, but I won't. It's too heavy. Tourists who pitched a tent and never woke up. Locals who went for a walk and never came back. People found days later far from the water, in the woods, with wet clothes and sand in their pockets. Like they had walked into the lake and crawled back out just to die on land. Investigators came, tests were done. Hypothermia, heart attack, undetermined drowning. But we knew. It was the lake. I left town for the big city when I was 19. Went to college, got a job, tried to forget. Figured these stories were just childhood nonsense that stayed behind. But 2 years ago, it all came back.
My sister. She was 8 years younger than me. Never believed the old tales. She came home for the weekend, decided to head to the lake alone, just to sit and get some fresh air. They found her in the morning. Same shallows. The face. I couldn't look at the police photos. My parents said it was exactly like all the others. That's when I knew I had to figure it out. Not to save anyone, just to understand why it takes them like that. Why our lake? Why no one can explain it? I came back to town for 2 weeks, told my folks I wanted to help around the house. Really, I started digging. Went through old newspaper archives at the county library, chatted with the folks who still remembered all the cases over coffee. Read through the old files at the local history museum, yellowed papers going back to the 70s. And the deeper I went, the scarier it got. Turns out the story went back way further, all the way to the 60s, when the lake was first being settled after the war. There were cases then too. Then a whole wave in the 80s. And all the old-timers talked about the same thing. At night, a thick fog rolls in over the lake, so dense that even a powerful flashlight only cuts through 3 feet. And in that fog, you hear a sound. Not water splashing, not wind in the reeds, but a slow, deep, steady breathing. Like something huge is lying on the bottom, inhaling slowly and exhaling just as slow. The old folks said it only happens around the full moon or the day before. At first it's faint, like a distant echo. Then it gets closer, more rhythmic, almost right by your ear. Some swore the water would ripple just a little, even though there wasn't a breath of wind. Others claimed if you stood perfectly still, you could feel a faint vibration under your feet, like a giant heartbeat somewhere down deep. I figured it was just old stories at first. But the more I read those files, the more often the exact same description kept showing up. Sound of breathing coming from under the water. Even in one of the 70s reports, a deputy had scribbled in pencil, possibly underwater gases or echo. But they never found any caves under the lake. And the animals, dogs in town, would never come closer than 20 yards to the shore. Deer on the forest trails would circle wide around it. Birds only landed on the water during the day and took off fast, like they sensed that breathing before any person could. I started going to the lake myself, during the day at first, took videos on my phone, made notes. The water looked calm and beautiful, but the longer I stood there, the stronger the feeling got that something was watching. Not eyes, just the sense that you weren't alone, like something incredibly patient was lying down there, waiting for you to take one step closer. One day I found an old, half-rotted wooden picture frame on the shore. It was lying in the cattails like the water had spit it out. You could still see faint traces of paint, the face of a saint worn away by time. Next to it were a few rusty coins from the Great Depression, like someone had left them on purpose. I took the frame home. It sat on my table all night. In the morning, I found it flipped over. The window had been closed the whole time. Nobody had come in. That's when I started to feel that the lake was keeping something none of us fully understood. And the more I learned, the fewer real answers I had. I realized that old papers and random conversations weren't going to cut it anymore. I needed to check things out for myself, right there at the lake. So I started heading down there more often, especially toward evening when the sun was just starting to drop and the air got heavy and damp. One of those evenings I got to the shore right at dusk. The fog hadn't rolled in yet, but you could already feel it building. I just stood there listening. At first everything seemed normal. Birds in the woods, frogs somewhere off in the distance, the soft rustle of cattails.
But the second the sun slipped completely behind the trees, everything changed in a matter of minutes. The fog came up out of the water so thick and fast that within seconds I couldn't even see my own boots. I switched on my flashlight. The beam hit a solid white wall just 3 feet in front of me. That's when I heard it for real. At first, the sound was barely there, like a distant, muffled echo, slow and steady. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. I told myself it was just my own pulse pounding in my ears from the tension, but the sound didn't fade. If anything, it grew a little clearer, more rhythmic, and the water, I could see it even in the flashlight beam, started to move ever so slightly. Not waves, not wind ripples, just a gentle, even rise and fall, like something large beneath the surface was slowly breathing in time with it. I stood frozen. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. I kept repeating to myself, "It's the wind, it's gases from the mud, it's just my nerves after all those stories." But the sound kept getting closer. Now it didn't seem to be coming from the middle of the lake anymore. It felt like it was right at the shore. I aimed the flashlight at the water. Out where the bottom dropped off, in the milky fog, something dark and massive flickered for a second. Not a fish, not a log, just a huge shadow slowly rising and falling. I blinked hard, shook my head, looked again. Nothing. Only black water and the reflection of the moon. But the breathing didn't stop. It was right there now. I felt a faint vibration under the soles of my boots, like a giant heartbeat pulsing somewhere far below. My legs suddenly felt heavy, as if the water itself was trying to hold me in place. The fog grew so thick I could barely see my own hands. Panic hit me like a cold wave. I spun around and ran. I didn't look back once. I ran the whole way home, feeling like that sound was following me, slow, calm, and patient. When I got home, I locked every door, lay down in bed, and stayed awake with my eyes wide open until morning. The next day, I packed my things and left. I told my parents work needed me back in the city right away. They didn't argue. They could see something was wrong just by looking at me. I never told them what I heard. I haven't told anyone. Until now. I live in a big city now, far away from any bodies of water. Work, friends, normal everyday life. But sometimes, especially the day before a full moon, I wake up in the middle of the night, and I swear I can hear that sound on the edge of my hearing. Quiet, steady. Inhale, exhale. Like it's still there, back in northern Michigan, lying at the bottom of our lake, waiting. I still don't know if what I saw and heard was real. Maybe it was just my nerves after digging into all those stories. Maybe the fog and my imagination played a cruel trick on me. Or maybe the lake really does hold something that's better left untouched. If you've made it all the way to the end, thank you for sticking with me. And please, if you have a quiet lake or pond near you, don't go there at night. Don't try to check for yourself. Some things are better left as old stories and nothing more. If this story got to you, drop a comment and tell me if you've ever experienced anything like this. I read every single one. As for me, I'm still trying to forget, even though I know I probably never will. Good night, and stay far away from still water.